Do you worry about your savings? Do you feel that no matter how hard you work, the true value of your money slips away, year after year, week after week? Does it feel like the rules of the financial game were written by someone else, for someone else? If you feel that quiet anxiety, if you feel the ground shifting beneath your financial reality, then you need to listen. Because the single most powerful force in your economic life, the US dollar, is built on a premise you might never have questioned, and the entire system is designed to keep you from asking one crucial question. Is confidence the only thing backing the dollar? This is not a theoretical question for economists in ivory towers. This is the difference between a secure retirement and a desperate old age. This is the silent war being fought for the value of your labor. The answer lies not in today's news, but in the most brutal lessons of history, a history the financial elites want you to forget. We are going to expose the exact moments over 2,000 years when leaders discovered the greatest financial trick of all, convincing you that a piece of paper or a number on a screen is real wealth simply because they say so. We're going to trace the history of this confidence game right to your bank account and show you exactly what happens when that faith finally evaporates. To understand the dollar today, we must first understand the true anatomy of trust. For centuries, across every great empire, money was not an idea, it was a physical promise. Take, for instance, the silver denarius of ancient Rome. Minted around 211 BC, it was almost pure silver, a coin so reliable it was accepted across the known world. Soldiers were paid in it, merchants relied on it, and ordinary citizens stored their wealth in it. The denarius was not just a coin, it was confidence in metal form. As long as people believed in Rome's power, they believed in its money. But empires are expensive, wars must be financed, legions must be paid, and the costs eventually outpace the tax revenue. This is the first most dangerous pressure point. When the empire grew stressed by military expenses, the emperors turned to an insidious trick: debasement. Instead of facing the politically dangerous option of raising taxes, they simply reduced the silver content of the denarius. A coin that began with 95% silver eventually plummeted to less than 5% silver. A bronze disc with a thin silver wash. This wasn't a mistake, it was a deliberate silent tax on the population. The government pretended nothing had changed, but everyone holding those coins paid the price as inflation skyrocketed and savings evaporated. This financial collapse was the true rot inside the empire, leaving the barbarians only to finish the job. The lesson is absolute. Trust is the most fragile part of any currency. Fast forward over 1,000 years to the rise of the English-speaking world's financial supremacy. The true transformation occurred in the 17th century with the creation of public debt. When the English government needed vast, immediate sums to fight wars, this necessity led to the founding of the Bank of England in 1694. Investors bought government bonds, effectively lending money to the Crown. In return, the Crown guaranteed interest payments, which were funded by taxes on ordinary people. This was a genius financial trick, a wealth transfer system dressed up as national finance. The wealthy earned secure interest, and the poor paid the taxes to fund those interest payments. For the first time, the state formalized national debt as a permanent institution, living off it, rolling it indefinitely. The government could now finance wars not with gold, but with the future promises of its citizens' labor. This permanent debt machine underpinned the gold standard, which defined the global financial landscape until 1914. This system promised that a nation's paper money could be exchanged for a fixed amount of actual gold, giving currencies credibility. But it also tied the hands of governments, as gold reserves were finite. The outbreak of World War I exposed the system's ultimate fragility. This was not just a war of trenches, it was a financial war. The cost of mobilizing millions of men and redirecting industry to weapons was astronomical. The gold reserves would not last. The math was merciless. So one by one, the major powers of the English-speaking and European world abandoned the gold standard. They quietly admitted to their citizens that money was now essentially a promise backed by nothing more than faith in the state. That breaking of the gold anchor was one of the most important financial shifts in modern history. Once governments tasted that freedom to print and borrow without consequence, they never looked back. The collapse of the classic gold standard during World War I unleashed a new era of financial chaos, culminating in the hyperinflation that nearly destroyed nations and the Great Depression that shattered global confidence. The world cried out for stability, and the United States was ready to provide it. By the end of World War II, the US stood alone, holding 2/3 of the world's gold reserves, its industrial and military might unchallenged. The moment to solidify the dollar-ease claim to the global throne arrived in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference. Here, the modern financial system was engineered. The US dollar was established as the anchor, the global reserve currency, convertible to gold at a fixed price of $35 per ounce. The world was to believe the dollar was as good as gold. This system allowed the English-speaking world, and specifically the US, to project unprecedented economic and political power globally. But the Bretton Woods system was built on a fundamental fatal lie known as the Triffin Dilemma. For the US to supply enough dollars for global trade and reserve needs, it had to run persistent deficits, pumping more dollars into the world than could possibly be backed by its finite gold supply. The stability of the global system rested entirely on the US government's unwavering commitment to that 35 gold price, even though the math of global trade made that promise impossible to keep forever. The world ignored this contradiction for 2 decades, resting on the sheer confidence in the American military-industrial complex. But the pressure was building. The costs of the Vietnam War and massive domestic programs in the 1960s were financed through the printing press, dramatically increasing the supply of dollars globally. Foreign powers, particularly France, began demanding the US exchange its surplus dollars for actual gold. As promised, the US gold reserves began a relentless decline. This was the most intense phase of the financial war, a silent, high-stakes game of chicken between foreign central banks and the US Treasury. By 1971, the US gold reserves could cover only a fraction of the dollars held by foreign governments, and the system was on the verge of a catastrophic run on the bank. Confidence was not just wavering, it was collapsing. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon delivered the final surgical blow to the post-war financial order, an event known as the Nixon shock. In a move so profound it still defines your economic reality today, Nixon announced, without consulting any other nation, that the United States would unilaterally suspend the convertibility of the dollar to gold. The anchor was cut. The promise that had backed the global economy for a generation was instantly broken. This was the second great betrayal, and it was total. From that moment forward, the US dollar became a purely fiat currency, backed by literally nothing but the full faith and credit of the United States government. The US had perfected the trick. They had permanently divorced their currency from any tangible physical asset. The world was forced to accept dollars because the US was the world's dominant military power and its economy was too large to ignore. The only thing truly backing the dollar was the world's continued confidence in the US government's ability to pay its debts. After the Nixon shock, the world entered the age of pure fiat currency. The value of the currency in your bank account is now determined by the collective belief that the Federal Reserve will manage the supply correctly. The method by which that confidence is maintained is known as the Petrodollar System. Through a series of geopolitical deals, the US ensured that oil, the lifeblood of the global economy, could only be purchased in US dollars. This engineered demand created a massive constant flow of global wealth back into the US financial system, allowing the US to incur global debt at levels no civilization has ever carried before. Governments today borrow trillions as if it were nothing. But history proves that this system, like the silver denarius before it, carries a time bomb. The moment that global confidence falters, when nations stop believing in the US's ability or willingness to pay, the financial reset will be triggered. This cycle of building debt, denying the risk, and eventually erupting in crisis is the ultimate pattern of financial history, and the price is always paid by the ordinary person. Inflation is not bad luck, it is policy. It is the quiet debasement of currency, the silent tax that transfers wealth upward, just as it did in ancient Rome. Your survival in this environment demands a fundamental shift in perspective. The illusion of permanence is the most dangerous financial error of all. Money is not the base, it is confidence, and confidence can disappear overnight. The survivors of every historical financial collapse were not the ones who trusted the system the most. They were the ones who doubted first. You must strip away the illusions. Understand that the system does not exist to protect you. It exists to protect itself. Real wealth is not found in paper or digits on a screen, but in assets that hold value when currency does not. Land, productive businesses, resources, and vital skills. In every crisis, money loses meaning, but production never does. The only financial freedom history allows is the resilience and knowledge to see through the illusion. The history of the dollar is the history of a confidence game, and the only way to win is to stop playing by their rules.